Today we'll be looking at the IVF process with the reproductive medicine group. The IVF process has three main phases: stimulation, egg retrieval, and transfer. The timeline we're showing is an approximation, and it is created to give you a greater overall understanding of how the IVF process works. Phase 1 is fertility testing and diagnosis. You begin this process when you complete your ordered testing, which includes blood work, and that is hormonal testing on cycle day 2 to 3, and STD testing. Ultrasound, which is an antral count, ideally cycle day 2 to 3. Uterine cavity testing will also be completed, which is a HSG and or a saline sono, and that would be on cycle day 6 to 12. Finally, your doctor will make sure that you are up to date on any necessary pap smear or mammogram. At your plan of treatment consult, the doctor will review your test results and work with you to develop a plan of treatment. Next, you'll complete the IVF education night and schedule your consent signing. At consent signing, your balance will be due if you are self-pay, and if you have fertility insurance, authorization will be started. Phase 2 is your priming cycle, where your body will be readied for your ovarian stimulation. To begin the priming cycle, you will call ART with your period once you have been approved by the billing office. First, you will prime with birth control pills, which is 2 weeks of oral contraceptive pills, or OCPs, starting on cycle day 2 to 3. Afterwards, you will come in for a baseline ultrasound. Next, you'll prime with LH tracking. You'll begin LH tracking as instructed by ART, then call with your LH surge. You'll begin testosterone and or estrogen as instructed by ART. Call ART with your next menses to schedule your baseline ultrasound on cycle day 2 to 3 for your stimulation cycle. Phase 3 begins your IVF stimulation cycle. Ultrasound and blood work will be performed again at baseline. If you're on OCPs, ART will instruct you when to take your last OCP. Stimulation meds begin 5 days after last OCP, regardless of when your period comes. If you are priming with testosterone or estrogen, baseline will be on cycle day 2 to 3, then stim medications will start that day or the following day. Stimulation medications are taken from 9 to 16 days. Your monitoring appointments, which are ultrasound and blood work, may be every day to every few days during this time. Your egg retrieval will be completed 36 hours after your trigger injection. Phase 4 is post-egg retrieval. ART will call the following day with fertilization report, and again on day 6 with final embryo cryopreservation report. Call with your period to begin birth control in preparation for your FET cycle. This is usually between 5 and 12 days following your egg retrieval. If you are doing PGT, biopsies are sent to the lab after day 6 cryopreservation report. Results take approximately 10 to 14 days. If you are doing a fresh transfer, your transfer will be on day 5 after your egg retrieval. The total time to get up to this point is at least 3 to 4 months in entirety. Phase 5 is your priming cycle that will prepare your body for embryo transfer. You will need a minimum of 3 weeks of OCPs. If more than 3 weeks is required for timing, continuous active pills are generally taken, which means no placebos. If priming with Lupron, injections will be given monthly for 2 to 4 months, starting after at least 2 weeks of OCPs. Phase 6 is your FET, or your transfer. Ultrasound and blood work will be performed at baseline. If you're on OCPs, ART will instruct you when to take your last OCP. Call ART with your period, generally 3 to 7 days after your last OCP, and you will receive a calendar at that time with your medication start date. If you are on Lupron, you will likely start your medication the same day as your baseline. Your lining will be checked after 1.5 weeks, and then the doctor will decide if progesterone can be started. If it's okay to proceed, the doctor will determine the start date for progesterone, and you may need to return for lab work prior to beginning progesterone. If your lining is not ready, the check will be repeated weekly until it is okay to proceed, or your doctor may have to cancel your cycle. Your transfer is usually done on day 6 of progesterone supplementation, and your pregnancy test is 8 to 10 days after your transfer. The total time to get to your transfer from the start of your OCPs is a bare minimum of 6 weeks, but likely 8 weeks or longer. Let's review the IVF process timeline in greater detail. The color-coded bar shows where you're at any given point in the IVF process. Some parts of the IVF process are somewhat variable due to when a woman cycles, as well as how her body responds to IVF. Phase 1, which is fertility testing and diagnosis, takes approximately 1 to 2 months. After that is completed, Phase 2, which is the priming cycle for stimulation, can begin. It takes approximately 3 to 4 weeks. Once that stage is completed, you move on to Phase 3. Phase 3 is the IVF stimulation cycle, and it takes approximately 2 weeks. Phase 4, which is post-egg retrieval, takes approximately 3 weeks. After that, we move to Phase 5, which is priming for your embryo transfer cycle. That takes approximately 3 weeks. And finally, we move to Phase 6, which is the FET cycle, which takes 3 weeks or more. As you can see, the total time from your IVF consult to your embryo transfer is approximately 5 to 6 months, but maybe longer. We hope this provides you with a better understanding of the IVF process and the time that it takes.